The Krell Empire had conquered 1,000 burning stars. Their armor was bulletproof, and their ships were invincible. But when they arrived on Earth, they made one fatal mistake. They looked down at the white fields of Siberia and saw a soft, sandy paradise. They didn't know that on this planet, the water turns to stone, and the air itself bites like a beast. They came to conquer a world, but they ended up freezing in a graveyard. The massive alien spaceship blocked the sun as it hovered over the northern hemisphere of Earth. It was a dark, terrifying shape against the blue sky. Inside the bridge of the ship, High Commander Zorg looked down at the planet with a greedy smile. Zorg was a member of the Krell race, a species of tall, lizard-like warriors. They had conquered 100 worlds, and they had never lost a war. Zorg looked at the giant screen and pointed a claw at the land below. It was a vast, endless blanket of white. To his alien eyes, the white ground looked like soft, beautiful sand or a desert of salt. He imagined it was a warm, tropical paradise. He did not know what snow was, and that ignorance was about to cost him everything. Zorg ignored the flashing yellow lights on his control panel. The ship's computer was trying to warn him about a severe temperature drop, but he swiped the alert away. He was arrogant and proud. He believed that Krell technology was the strongest in the universe. Their battle suits were designed to handle space, so he thought a little breeze on Earth would be nothing. He saw no large cities and no massive armies in this white zone. It looked like the perfect landing spot. He thought the humans were weak for leaving such a large piece of land empty. He pressed the launch button, expecting a quick and easy victory. Thousands of drop pods shot out from the belly of the mothership. They fell through the clouds like fiery rain, slamming into the ground with heavy thuds. Steam hissed into the air as the hot metal pods touched the frozen surface. The doors opened, and the Krell army marched out in perfect formation. They looked scary and powerful. They wore thick, shiny black armor and carried heavy plasma rifles that could melt tank metal in seconds. They stood in the bright sunlight, confident and ready for war. The landscape around them was silent and still. There was no noise, only the sound of the wind. The Krell soldiers checked their weapons, thinking this was just another training mission. They did not realize that the ground beneath their feet was not sand, but frozen water. The planet was not welcoming them, it was waiting for them. The Krell army began their march forward, expecting a smooth path to victory. But the ground betrayed them immediately. Instead of firm sand, the white surface was soft, deep, and slippery. The heavy metal boots of the alien soldiers sank into the powder up to their knees. It was exhausting to walk. The glorious, terrifying army looked foolish as soldiers slipped on patches of hidden ice and fell hard onto their backs. They tried to stand up, but their heavy armor made them slide around helplessly. Commander Zorg watched from his command vehicle, feeling annoyed. He did not understand why the ground was fighting them. He ordered his troops to push forward, but the march was slow and clumsy. The white powder stuck to their legs, melting slightly from the heat of their suits and then freezing again into heavy blocks of ice. While the aliens struggled, the humans remained invisible. High on the snowy ridges and hidden behind the white pine trees, human scouts watched the invaders. They did not shoot. They did not scream. They simply observed. The Krell scanners showed small heat signatures that appeared and then vanished quickly. The humans were retreating deeper into the forest, pulling back into the shadows. To Zorg, this looked like cowardice. He laughed and told his officers that the humans were running away in fear. He believed the Earth forces were too scared to face the Krell might. He was wrong. The humans were not running away, they were leading the aliens into a trap. They were luring the cold-blooded invaders away from their ships and into the deep, frozen wilderness. Then, the true weapon of Earth revealed itself. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the bright blue sky turned into a dark, angry gray. The temperature dropped rapidly. It went from uncomfortable to deadly in less than an hour. The wind began to howl like a wild animal, cutting through the gaps in the alien armor. The Krell soldiers were reptiles, and their bodies relied on external heat to move. As the air grew colder, their movements became stiff and slow. Inside their helmets, a red warning light started to blink. The heating systems were working at maximum power to keep the soldiers alive, and the batteries were draining terrifyingly fast. The planet was not attacking with bullets, it was attacking with the air itself. Night had fully swallowed the land, bringing a darkness deeper than space itself. Then, the sky opened up. It started with a few heavy flakes, but within minutes, it turned into a blinding blizzard. The wind screamed like a monster, picking up the ice from the ground and mixing it with the fresh snow to create a swirling white curtain. The Krell soldiers turned on their helmet lights to see, but this was a terrible mistake. The bright beams reflected off the millions of swirling snowflakes, creating a wall of glare that blinded them completely. They could not see their own hands in front of their faces. The disciplined army fell into chaos. Soldiers bumped into each other, shouting orders that were drowned out by the roaring wind. They were lost in an open field, trapped in a white cage. The cold became aggressive, attacking their advanced technology with ruthless efficiency. The Krell plasma rifles used a sophisticated liquid cooling system to keep the energy core stable. However, the alien engineers had never tested this liquid in sub-zero temperatures. As the liquid froze, it expanded inside the delicate chambers of the guns. When a nervous soldier tried to fire a warning shot into the dark, the weapon did not shoot a laser beam. Instead, the frozen barrel shattered. The gun exploded in his hands, turning into useless scrap metal. Across the battlefield, tanks ground to a halt as their intake vents clogged with ice. The engines sputtered, coughed, and died, leaving the heavy machines frozen in place like statues. Now, the invades were defenseless, blind, and freezing. The battery indicators on their suits dropped to critical levels. The artificial heat inside their armor began to fade, replaced by a biting chill that seeped into their reptile skin. Their blood thickened, making their reactions sluggish and weak. They huddled together, trying to share warmth, no longer looking like conquerors. They were just frightened creatures trapped on a hostile world. And then, through the howling wind, they heard a new sound. It was not a tank or a jet. It was the sharp, rhythmic sound of metal carving through ice. Swish. 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 The humans were no longer retreating. They were coming back, and the storm was their shield. The humans appeared like ghosts out of the blizzard. They did not wear heavy metal armor or carry glowing plasma weapons. Instead, they were dressed in thick, puffy white suits that made them invisible against the snow. They moved with incredible speed and grace, gliding over the deep powder on long, flat boards attached to their feet. To the clumsy, sinking aliens, this looked like magic. The humans circled the frozen Krell formation, striking quickly and silently. They used kinetic weapons, simple rifles that fired solid metal bullets. These primitive guns did not rely on liquid cooling or batteries, so they worked perfectly in the freezing cold. A shot would ring out, a Krell soldier would fall, and the human attacker would vanish back into the storm before anyone could return fire. Panic spread quickly through the alien ranks. They tried to track the enemy, but their sensors were useless. The thermal cameras saw nothing because the humans were so well insulated that no body heat escaped their suits. Then, a Krell soldier saw something that broke his spirit completely. Through a gap in the swirling snow, he saw a human stop for a moment. The human was not shivering or dying. He lifted a face mask, revealing pink flesh, and let out a breath of steam. The human looked comfortable. He looked like he was enjoying the weather. The alien was freezing to death inside a suit that cost a fortune, while this local creature was surviving with just layers of cloth. It was a terrifying realization for the invaders. These soft humans were actually monsters adapted to a hellish environment. The order and discipline of the Krell army shattered. They were no longer fighting a war, they were fighting a nightmare. Soldiers began to run blindly into the dark, desperate to escape the invisible attackers. They fired their remaining weapons wildly into the trees, hitting nothing but wood and ice. They abandoned their frozen tanks and dropped their heavy equipment to try and run faster. But the snow was deep, and their legs were weak from the cold. The humans on their snowmobiles, loud, roaring machines that chewed through the ice, chased them effortlessly. The hunters had become the prey. The forest echoed with the revving of engines and the screams of the invaders as the white trap closed tight around them. The blizzard intensified into a wall of white fury, and the temperature plummeted to 40 degrees below zero. At this extreme, the cold was no longer just uncomfortable, it was a physical weapon that shattered everything it touched. The wind howled with such force that it knocked the exhausted aliens off their feet. The few Krell soldiers who were still standing felt their suits give a final, dying beep. The batteries were dead. The heating units clicked off. Silence fell inside their helmets, replaced instantly by the creeping, numbing bite of the Arctic air. They looked at their hands, watching the frost creep over their glass visors like a spiderweb, sealing them inside their own armor. They were trapped in the dark, cold metal shells that were supposed to protect them. At the center of the landing zone, Commander Zorg's massive flagship groaned under the stress. The advanced metal of the ship's hull was designed to withstand the heat of burning stars, not the brittle, cracking cold of an Earth winter. With a loud, terrifying snap that sounded like a gunshot, the front landing gear broke. The metal had become as fragile as glass. The giant ship tilted forward and slammed into the frozen Earth, burying its nose deep in the snow. Zorg was thrown from his command chair. He crawled to the window and watched in horror as his invincible war machine became a frozen tomb. The engines flickered and died, unable to ignite in the freezing atmosphere. They were stranded on the ice. The battle ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. The Krell biology took over. As their body temperatures dropped, their reptile instincts forced them into an involuntary hibernation. One by one, the terrifying warriors of the galaxy simply stopped moving. They sat down in the snow, their eyes closing, drifting into a sleep from which they would never wake. The human attackers saw this and ceased fire. The commanding human officer signaled his troops to hold their positions. They did not need to waste any more bullets. They simply gathered around their portable heaters, poured hot coffee from thermoses, and waited. The humans did not need to fight anymore. The planet itself was finishing the war. Inside the broken, freezing flagship, Commander Zorg was the only one left moving. His survival instincts screamed at him to run. He abandoned his frozen crew and scrambled into the ship's single emergency escape pod. His claws shook violently as he punched in the launch code. He did not care about honor or victory anymore, he only wanted to be warm. With a roar of rocket boosters, the small pod blasted out of the crashed ship. It shot up through the storm clouds, leaving a trail of smoke against the white snow. Zorg left his entire army behind as frozen statues, a silent graveyard of the galaxy's finest warriors buried in the ice. As the pod broke through the atmosphere and entered the black safety of space, Zorg finally stopped shivering, but the fear in his heart would stay forever. Safe in orbit, Zorg looked down at the blue and white planet one last time. From space, Earth looked peaceful and beautiful, but now Zorg saw it as a mouth waiting to bite. He activated the Galactic Communication Beacon to send a priority message to the High Council. His voice was weak and terrified as he recorded the final log of the invasion. He did not warn them about the human weapons or their armies. He warned them about the planet itself. He told them that Earth was a cursed, death world where the water turned into hard stone and the air acted like acid on the skin. He marked the solar system on the star map with a glowing red skull symbol, "Do not approach." Back on the surface, the storm finally broke. The morning sun rose over the glittering fields of snow, making the world look bright and clean. The landscape was deadly silent. A human sergeant walked calmly through the field of frozen alien machinery. He wore a thick coat and a wool hat, his breath forming clouds in the crisp air. He stopped next to a frozen alien tank and tapped the ice with his knuckle. He didn't look like a soldier who had just fought a war, He looked like a man taking a morning walk. He pulled a metal flask from his pocket, took a sip of hot coffee, and looked up at the sky where the escape pod had vanished. He smiled a cold, hard smile. The galaxy now knew the truth: winter protects the earth, and humans are the kings of the cold.